Good evening. Good evening. It's Celebration Monday.
Welcome back to Monday Nights Live, where if it's
We
Monday,
you are live with Kamala and Winston. What are you celebrating tonight?
I was sitting down here thinking about what I wanted to say, and I was gonna go with celebrating the fact that almost a month and a half in of getting a rowing machine, I'm still using it. I was gonna celebrate that.
What's a rowing machine?
It's my little
Oh, your exercise.
yeah.
It does look like you're rowing a boat.
I sure am. I sure am. So I was gonna celebrate that, but then I was also thinking, you know, I'm feeling tired, but I wanted to celebrate feeling tired
Mm,
because that tells me that one, I've been productive.
mm-hmm,
I have the ability to be productive.
mm-hmm,
And two, that my body is still able to give me the signals that it needs to give
mm.
me when I need something
I
different.
see what you're doing there. So you're feeling tired, but
Mhm.
instead of complaining about it, you're celebrating it.
That my body works the way it's
Oh, that's
supposed
I
to.
like that. I like that. Well, I'm celebrating. I went to the dentist today,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to figure out how to do mine like you did yours. Well, I'm celebrating that I had the ability to go to the dentist. That when they went there, they didn't see something worse than what it was, and were able to take care of some of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I have a whole
Mm-hmm. But you had the
thing.
means to go, and there are
Yes.
many people probably sitting in this very same city today who have not had that opportunity.
And so I'm grateful. But now that you say that there are many people that have not had the opportunity, I'm celebrating, I'm trying to do what you did. I'm celebrating the work that's going into trying to get people to have that opportunity.
Yes.
So what
Yes.
we're trying to say is instead of stressing about everything, we should learn how to celebrate things. We should learn how to find a way to celebrate things.
Mm-hmm.
And we're being very intentional on Mondays where we want to just celebrate stuff.
Yeah.
All right? All right. What are you celebrating? If you tell us, would love to hear from you tonight, what you're celebrating. And we want to welcome you again to a Monday Night Live with KW. What are we doing
We are selling. Okay.
here?
So guys, so one of the things that we are here to do is not just talk to some amazing guests about their life's
And
journey.
we have a very
And we have a
amazing guest
very
tonight.
amazing guest, part two tonight of
Yes.
her amazingness. But that's not the only thing we're here to do. We want for you to jump onto www.kwministries.net/shop, and we want for you to check out our site. We want for you to have the opportunity to access some of the great things that we have already curated just for you.
And sitting here, Kamala, we actually looking at a project that we're working on. And this won't be ready for any time soon, but we're always working on something, preparing it for you. So we see Brother Glenn. What are you celebrating on this Monday, Brother Glenn? And Sister Martin is in Antigua.
Okay.
I guess I know what you're celebrating, ma'am. Some nice beaches and
Sand and sea.
sand and sea in Antigua. But Sister Martin, if you don't mind sharing with us, what are you celebrating on this precious Monday? We're so grateful to you. So we've had some wonderful guests on, and our tonight's guest has been on before.
Mhm.
We're dealing with a journey through the world of medicine,
Yes.
and I think we had a wonderful conversation last time, but the hour went by so fast
It really did.
that we didn't get in everything. And so we're so happy that she decided to come back.
Yep.
Wait a minute. She was supposed to come back before now. And yes. We're happy that she was able to come back.
Why are you gonna put that lady on Front Street?
Oh, okay. No, I'm not. I was just trying to remember. I was trying to make sure I wasn't crazy. That's what happens when you do it live. But we're excited to have Dr. Chinwe on again.
Absolutely.
She is one of the kindest, nicest person. She doesn't age. She looks the very same way as when I knew her in college. Smart, giving, just a wonderful person. And I'm really, really, really excited that we get to host her again tonight. So,
Now, if you are joining us for the very, very first time, buckle down because we're about to have a great conversation. And that's what our Monday nights are really about. We just want to get to know people, get to know their stories, how they've gone through life, how they're going through life. And what we've discovered over a year and some, 2 years,
2 years, Mom.
2 years and some of doing this, is that we all need each other.
Yeah.
And so we get this awesome opportunity to just talk with people about their lives. And we hope that what you'll get out of this is inspiration, motivation to continue walking your path.
And right before Doc comes in, Sister Martin says, "Yes, I am grateful to God for bringing me home. I am here with some of my siblings." All right, all right, all right. We hope you are enjoying yourself. We hope that you're having a lot of fun. If your siblings are watching with us, we're saying hello and we're telling them welcome to our Monday Night Live. All right. And if you win tonight, let's make sure we send the gift to women. Let's make sure if you win tonight, let's make sure we send the gift to Antigua. Okay. All right.
There we go. Brother Glenn, I'm celebrating life. God is good to me. I'm alive in 2023. I've been through some hard times, but He has kept me.
We're celebrating that with you. We're celebrating that with you. And we're celebrating bringing Dr. Chinwe in right now. Doc, well, where is she? Where is she? Where is Doc at? There she is. Hey, Doc, how are you? Unmute that, unmute, touch that unmute, but there she goes.
There it goes.
How are you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay?
We are hearing you perfect. And we are so happy that you're here with us on tonight. And we're so grateful for the conversation that we're about to have. But before we start, what are you celebrating? So, well, you heard us back there. So, what are you celebrating?
Whew, where to begin?
That's good.
I am celebrating my children.
Yes.
Because it's just fascinating to see them excited and driven in their own right. I love it when they set goals for themselves. And so last week, my daughter had her first week of being in the safety patrol. And I can't tell you on a regular day to try to get her up in the morning, it's like a whole feat. But this past week, she was waking me up.
Ready to go, yeah.
She was waking me up like, all right, I can't miss. I got to be there by 7:05. So that just brought a lot of joy to my heart that she actually has things that she's striving for. So I hope she continues.
That's great.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, I appreciate when God says, seek me with all your heart and I will be found of you. It's really true. Like he's just like, where you been? Like, I've been waiting for you to actually want me to be present in every single sense of your mind and your heart and your decisions. So yeah, that's been very interesting seeing God like show Himself each day. Yeah.
Well, we've had a co-host, Kamala, Uncle Jimmy, but he's not here with us tonight. And I think a good starting point would be with his question that he posted on Facebook that he said that he would have asked you is how do you balance spirituality with the science? Did you happen to see that? I don't know if I'm phrasing it right, but while you're answering that, I'll find it to make sure I'm phrasing it right. How would you balance the spirituality with science?
Yeah. I think that's a very loaded question because I think it presents itself in so many different ways, especially when you're trying to meet people who come to you for help to be healed, for health promotion, and everyone comes with different belief systems about like what it means to be healthy or how you become healthy. So many different belief systems. And even as we sort of like balance what has God gifted us as human beings to develop, like skills, talents, innovation, technology, all those things, balancing that with there's just some things we still don't know. Like no matter how much we are, advancing in healthcare, there's still so much we don't know. As it relates to the root cause, like how did that happen? Like we know we can describe what happened, but how it happened, we still can't be certain. There's this terminology in medicine called idiopathic. Anytime we hear the word idiopathic, it's like, well, we don't really know why it's happening, but we can tell you about it. So for me, I find that that's that's where I kind of like infuse my faith to say medicine is great and medicine can know all of what it knows at this point in time based on the information that we have at this point. However, history has told us that science has or has not gotten it wrong in different ways. And so, while it's important to trust science, knowing that science is still time limited and God isn't.
Hold on, wait. Hashtag. I hope you remember this from last time. You can't drop those bombs and then just run. Science is time limited, but God is not. That's good.
Yeah. So for me, that's kind of where I fall whenever I'm advising patients and clients and saying, yeah, to this point, this is what we know up to this point. But there's so much more that we still are discovering. And so my role is to provide like the pros and cons or just risks and benefits and give you all the potential options that there could be related to what's going on with you. And then based on your family, your demographic, like just things that make up who you are, I'm here to support your decision. Like I can't be the one to be like, why aren't you, how dare you not do this or that? It's like everyone has to live with whatever decisions they make. But it's my role as a science or health provider to just share what we know based on data, based on research, based on, we polled all these many people, but at the end of the day, you are still a human being and you're not just a data point, so we have to always like balance those sort of the information when we're making decisions. But for me, that's how I fit it in.
I love that.
So that here was Pastor Gibson's exact quote. He said, "I want to know where her biblical worldview connects with the scientific view," and I think she did. She answered
absolutely.
that. The last time, Mom, I think we left off at Oakwood.
We did.
Naps.
Yes.
So, what made you mission-minded at such a young age? So you come to you're at Oakwood. You've declared your major, and I remember the biology students had life rough. I remember the labs and
so survival of the fittest is what we used to call it.
I remember watching it all. Share with us, please, what gave you that drive for mission, and how did you balance all of that?
I would say all I knew because I was born in Nigeria and, have been exposed to, different levels of poverty or need. Even though my dad was a pharmacist, my mom was back then she was just a teacher. Now she's a nurse, but, and not just a teacher, she was a teacher. And so I think for me, I think I always had this thing about like people in physical need, like wanting to just be able to help. I think I've always just had that benevolent spirit. And it wasn't until I went into college at Oakwood that I really had the exposure to, medical missions or just mission trips in general. And that I saw what it was that I was feeling as a young child. It was a lot of what, Dr. Anthony Paul was our department chair then. He's the one that would lead the students on these trips. And he would always emphasize that, before you try to sort of like impart any knowledge or, heal the like medical condition, you have to meet their physical need first. So like, have they eaten, do they have shelter? Do they have love, belonging, all the, like, when you look at the hierarchy, the basic needs,
Mm-hmm.
and the basic things right there, it's like literally, sometimes in healthcare we forget about that, and we have a lot of assumptions that, oh, this is already met. But I think seeing what I saw as a Nigerian young child, I was familiar with when people are lacking and how that can sort of affect their ability to hear any message that you're trying to share with them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm hungry, and you want to talk to me about something so abstract that I can't, so
Can you
yeah.
eat that?
Can you
No,
eat
you
that,
can't.
right? and then there's all this judgment placed on when people are surviving or doing things to survive, and it's like, just let's reserve that for a second and say, well, what can we do to support that? Because then that might actually address what we think is sin, but it's just them trying to survive and being desperate to do so. So,
Mom,
yeah.
I want us to follow up. I want help me formulate the follow up question to what Doc just said, as in not judging people when they're trying to survive and being supportive to them. Because I think we get in trouble a lot. I think I think as a church, as Christians, the three of us are Christians here. Um, we we don't do a good job of that.
No. I would say the terminology that we like to use is we meet people where they are.
Mhm.
But I think the reality sometimes is that we meet people where we think they should be.
Yeah.
And then we go from that point. And what I hear Dr. Chinwe saying is, listen, part of my motivations came from being able to truly see people where
They
they
really are.
are, and recognizing, and not just seeing, but recognizing how where somebody is impacts their ability to
hear.
interact with me in a way that's meaningful on the realm that I want them to interact with me. So being able to both see it, acknowledge it, and respond to it, I think, is crucial.
How can we do a better job at that? How can we do a better job at not trying to push what we have down people's throat without genuinely meeting them where they are?
Yeah. It's a hard question because we're all sort of human natured, and we're all going through our own sort of like bubble matters. And because I think the real answer is just like making time to commune together, just being in space with each other. I think isolation makes it easy for us to be like, I don't know. And so the more isolated we are in space, or in our spaces, the easier it is for us to stay in our biases. And so, and I'll give you a prime example, because I'm fasting this week, on a particular decision I need to make. And one of the things that I'm trying to do to combat my hunger pangs is like whenever I'm feeling like I need to eat, it's like I find somebody to pray with, or I find somebody to think about who has asked me to pray for them about something. And so I did that with a friend of mine at church that, we've been cool, but we haven't gotten a chance to connect. Sometimes, I remember there was a time she extended an invitation to me that I was just so busy. Honestly, our schedules just couldn't connect. And I could tell in her response when I did say, "Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't get a chance," I could tell that there may have been some sort of like write-off, And so for me, I just felt like, oh man, she didn't understand that like there's stuff going on in my world that it wasn't intentional. But so anywho, so I went up to her to pray with her this day, this weekend. And if you're listening, love you, sis. But she I just kind of like asked her, I told her what was going on, because I was like, I'm here to pray with you because this is what I'm trying to do and this is what's going on. And I could tell she was like, man, I didn't know. Like I just didn't know. And I wonder how how many of us do that with other people and say,
Mhm.
man, I didn't know,
Mhm.
and but it just takes that time just to pause and say, hey, how are you
But
doing?
not everybody's going to tell us what was going on.
That too.
And so we would have hurt a lot of people, written off a lot of people without knowing their story, which we don't have a right to.
And rightfully so. But what I think as a church
Mhm.
is needed is creating more safe spaces for
Mhm.
people to feel like, oh yeah, this is a place that I can share, because they're not going to share if they're not going to feel safe.
They don't feel safe.
If they don't feel safe. And so instead of saying, well, why aren't you sharing? That, like, that's why I do my practice now. Like, my practice was really designed to, like, it was created to redesign how we provide care for teens.
Mm-hmm.
Because the narrative is, oh, teenagers don't like, to go to the doctor, we have to drag them in, and I'm just like, but then when they get there, how are you welcoming them? How do they see that you were expecting them? Or the communications, are they relevant to them? Because I used to do these. Sorry, and now I'm going off to like a whole different topic. I can talk about
No, you're fine. You're
You're
fine.
where
Because that's where we want to end, but they're fine.
but it's the same thing. But like, we're all the youth in church. I used to do AY ministries for over like 6-7 years, and for me it was like, how do I redesign what they understand church to be, so that it's like, oh, I'm coming to serve. And I'm telling you, many times we were not in a building, we were on on somewhere in the community serving, like we were doing service work. And so I think if we sort of like consider what is a safe space, we might start to see more people be able to kind of like share. And then when we share more, then we see people in our humanity, and it allows us to sort of like see that we're really all in this together, and everybody's trying to figure it out all together. But that's that. But I can talk more about my clinic a little bit more
We
later.
will.
Yeah.
We'll keep going. Okay. All right. So, but no. So no, since we're riding this horse, let me stay right here one more second. One more second, because
Okay.
one of the things I always liken us as a church is I always say we're like people in hospitals, and I have cancer, you have diabetes. But I'm scared to tell you that I have cancer, and you're scared to tell me that you have diabetes, because we're going to talk about each other. Oh, you have cancer. Oh, you have diabetes. Oh, you have cancer. Yeah. And so, how do we make that safe space? How do we how do we make the environment safe where people can say, where we can eventually find out we have a whole bunch in common.
Yeah. It's, some would say it's a top down, like it's a top down activity, where if there is leadership that models vulnerability, then you'd be surprised. Hopefully, there will be others who also like follow suit. And it's not to model it enough to say, oh, now let's go talk about, the pastor will talk about, it's not about that. It's to say, here's my vulnerability, and here is where I know Christ has filled in for me. Therefore, who am I to cast the first stone? Right. And so if there is a congregation or following that sees the leadership move in a certain direction, it's like there should be a way to kind of like foster a community that says, who am I to cast the first stone?
That's right.
I don't think we have enough. I honestly, I feel like in some instances, and only very few, a handful of like preachers and pastors I've seen take that vulnerability stance. Like sometimes they'll preach it, but it's still a little bit distant. It's not, yeah. So, but it's how do we balance that to encourage, leadership to extend that in our
Y'all,
homes.
just so you know, y'all gonna kill us when we do become vulnerable. Just so you know,
You're gonna kill it.
I'm sorry.
But you know what?
I was trying not to. Y'all, when we become vulnerable, y'all kind of kill us.
Y'all, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The community kills. But I feel like that's the whole part of.
That's a part of it.
Pointing to God, like, because then it's not about me. Like that's really the whole idea of having Christ be like I am behind Christ. Like I'm trying to live behind Christ. And so y'all can talk about me, but I'm not going to take it personal because Christ is covering me. And so that, again, that's hard. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying it's an easy thing.
Oh, we know.
but as humans, it's hard. It's hard. But I think small groups, like creating small, because that's the thing. It's like, it's not to be vulnerable in a large setting. It's to say we're creating small group communities and connections so that, yeah, you may be vulnerable. You're vulnerable in this small space and in this small space, in this small space. But it's hard to have, like, because organizations like come into play when there's like a large set of people, and that is not the best place to be safe in a large open space. So no, I didn't kill somebody the other day. No, it's not about that. Is to say we're creating small communities where there is some level of confidentiality and privacy to say we are a family, just like in your home. Don't air your dirty laundry out. It's like within your home, your small church communities, you're creating safe spaces. But again, this is all in my head. But it's something
I love it.
But it's something that I feel like, it took me a while to get young people to build rapport with each other. And so what I found was that when they started like having 3 or 4 of them that would like hang, then somehow it lowered their guard for them to then connect as a unit. Because at least, and I think in my speculation, I think it allows them to find alliances to say, even if the whole multitude goes against me, I have like my 2 people they're gonna have my back, And so I think that's the key. It's like, it's not to say that people aren't going to come for you, but you have a shield of a social support that allows you to withstand it,
Good.
But,
that's good.
Yeah.
I think some of your thought process, I heard this a little bit earlier, that this thought process played itself into how you set up your clinic. And so before we went there, because I know we want to end with that, I'm curious to, there's a building that comes to getting to this place where here is what I conceptualize and here's what I've put into practice. There's a building that gets us there. So talk to us about that building from the point where we left off, which was NAPS and Oakwood and working your way through.
So let's go to med school.
Let's go to med school. Like, what was your foundation?
Yeah, so med school.
And Brother Glenn, I see your question. I'm gonna get it in there when we get to talking about our clinic.
Yes.
Okay. Med school was a hot mess. It was a hot mess in a good way, character building way, because of my experience at Oakwood, and just some things that happened. Like, I had a mental shift in my drive. And I'll share this because I think it's one of those like epiphanies of like the Me Too movement. It's like sometimes you put out of your mind and then you just kind of go until you start seeing this happen to other people. And you're like, oh my goodness, that was me too. But related to when someone does not have the faith in you to be the person that you thought that you could be. And so I had an experience like that. So trying to apply for med school, I wasn't as driven as I was all through college. And so I only literally, and then my mindset shifted because it's like, I don't want to go to just like any American school because I want to be a medical missionary. I literally was like, I'm going to be a medical missionary. I'm going to work with Doctors Without Borders or ADRA, live on my backpack, and forget all
that was
like,
some of nap stockings.
It was. So I was like, forget all this, modernized medicine. I want to like be in the corners in the huts and villages somewhere. And so I just felt like I was looking for an opportunity like that in the States. But then again, like I said, there are other things that affected my ability to search harder. And so one of my friends, Dr. Cynthia Gordon, was at a school in England. And she's like, you gotta come join. So that's where I went to med school. I was in England, lived there for 3 years. And the school's mission was to train physicians to serve in underserved sites. It was Kigezi International School of Medicine at that time. And so I got to go to Uganda, I got to go to Canada, and I was living the dream. Like I was traveling and I was like learning so many ways that medicine is practiced around the globe. And the only reason that I even considered coming back to the States was the time that I spent in Uganda, and going back to like how my mind started working into like systems. Like I think that's kind of where it started. It was like systems thinking. And when I was in Uganda, I did pediatrics and OBGYN deliveries. And I remember this one patient in my OBGYN rotation, the mom came and she had a protruded arm, like the baby's arm was like sticking out. And so in my mind, I was like, this is an emergency, you know, like what's the protocol? Like, and if you were to see how like lackadaisical everybody was just like taking their time in the OR and doing all this, I'm just like, time is ticking, shoot me. And I'm over here, so the registrar was like in his office and we were in the OR prepping. Mind you, I was just a med student. And, you know, we were trying to prep the OR and I was like fighting with my counterpart. He was a surgeon as well too, but he was a surgeon in training like me. And so I was pediatrics in training. And so him and I were kind of going back and forth. I was like, why isn't like what moving? like whose role is what? Like who's supposed to be doing what and how, like, you know? And I was like, and they're like, yeah, we're waiting for the registrar. I'm just like, where is her? So I ran to the office and I was like, we have a patient, you know, and in my head, I was like, what is going on? And so by the time he gets there, like, mind you, I don't know how long the baby's arm has been sticking out there. You know, membranes are all ruptured. So that's like exposed uterus and risk for infection is so high. So of course, by the time, you know, we did the C-section, brought the baby out, it was a stillborn. Like the baby was, you know, did not make it. And I think I cried. I was just so disheartened because I was like, what kind of place is this? I thought this was a hospital. And so to me, so when I asked the question, I was like really puzzled. I was like, why? Like, what's going on? Why is this? Like, why wasn't this seen as an urgency or emergency? And they said, oh, well, you know, this is how it is. They come from the rural area. By the time they come here, we already know the baby's dead. So there's no reason to rush. But I was like, and then not only that, like the nurses and like, they was like, man, I just came back from working in the market. So, and they don't really pay me that much here. So like the drive for, you know, for quality action.
Care,
like there was no incentive for them to do that. And then I also asked about, you know, the mom, because the mom wasn't even crying. She didn't look sad at all. And I asked why that was in the culture. And they said, well, you know, maybe this is common for them. Like infant mortality is really high in that area. And so this was just another lost baby for them. And I was like, I don't know, like it's like how your environment can kind of like condition you to have different responses. That was my first time really seeing that. And not only that, to see a system where I feel like they had either adapted or accommodated for, you know, things that not necessarily should be right, but it's like, well, we don't have any other incentive to do it otherwise. And so for me, I made it a mission for myself that wherever I work is like, there would be more sort of like team approach to say, when this happens, like no matter how long, no matter what, you know, chances you think, like just at least making an effort, but seeing that everyone's playing a role and their communication is clear so that each person knows what they should be doing, you know, at any given time. So that was my sort of like epiphany to like really thinking systems minded. And then I, you know, and for me, my love for adolescent medicine didn't happen until after medical school. And so that was med school rotation. Then I chose to do a residency in pediatrics. And so I knew I wanted to do it like with some community mindsets, not just necessarily working in a hospital university setting. And so I did my residency in Pennsylvania, Crozer-Chester Medical Center. But while I was there, we had a rotation that we would go into the school. And so there was a school-based health center where there was someone who was trained. That's the first time I ever heard that this field even existed. But Dr. Himmelstein, love her to death. She was an adolescent medicine fellowship trained physician.
Mm.
Her specialty was to just focus on teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, so I can do peds, but also like have a specialty within peds.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I loved about it was that her clinic was in a school. And so she had access to students. And so she not only saw the kids who came into her office for care, but she could create like health education or workshops. She created peer health educators who were like either seniors who were taught health information to be able to share with the rest of their peers. So it's almost like public health. Like, you know, before I knew there was public health, that was my first exposure.
Yeah.
And so I said, why not like think about not only fixing things, but like how do we prevent and how do we promote health? And so that was when I said, okay, I think I like this field, because at some point I was like, I should be a social worker. I should not be a doctor. I think I gravitated towards, again, the heart, like trying to care and trying to like case manage. But there was a social work preceptor during that our rotations, who took us into the community, showed us how environments affect health. Like we had a lot of increased asthma cases in our residency program, and it was because of cockroaches in some of the buildings, and when they release certain toxins, it affects like their allergens. And so just different things. And I was like, oh my goodness, like don't just give a medication, figure out like what's happening in their environments, where they live, you know, what's their status. And I remember, there was a doc that talked about like a kid was coming with asthma allergies, and it always happened whenever their parents fought. And turns out that it was because the dad would get so mad that he would punch the walls and the dust. Yes.
Oh my God.
Right? Like talk about like detective work. The dust from his punching the wall would always sort of like spill out into the environment, and that would cause his asthma to flare. But it wasn't until she spent time to really dig deep. She's like, man, we're giving you all this medication. It's just piling up. But like, tell me a little bit more about like when this happens, you know? And so for me, I feel like, man, it's so important for us to really take time for history, but like doing home visits. Like I did a study when I was in residency about like home visits, the value of home visits. It's like, you got to see their environment to also see how it's affecting their health. But yeah, so that was my introduction to public health. And I was like, okay, whatever I do, it has to have like MD and PH, because I need to have that sort of like combined approach to providing healthcare.
So let me ask you this with what you just said, and well, both of you, how important is it then that we don't? And you spoke about a systems approach within your clinic, which you'll explain to us more of in a second. But how important is it for us to work together as a community? Because you just talked about the spray person, the insecticide people. Then you talked about the construction. No, think about it, because when you punch the wall, that stuff comes out. Then you talk about mental health, and you haven't gotten to medicine yet,
right?
So how important is it, and what are some of the relationships? For example, I know from fall that you take your kids skating. You're not your biological, your patients.
My patients, yeah.
Right. So how important is it not just for it to be systematic within your own office, but on a communal basis? And Christine said good night. So hey Christine, how are you? Tell us how you're celebrating Monday. How important is that for you?
I think it's very, very important, and I'm just coming at it from my lens as a pediatric and adolescent medicine provider, because so much of what determines their adult life is what's happening around them, right? And because they don't have full autonomy to make all full decisions. So it's literally things that they don't really have control over.
Yeah.
You know, like who their caregivers are and how their caregivers communicate, where their caregivers take them, what they expose them to or not expose them to. And so just from that biopsychosocial level, yes, I definitely see that it's very important for us to consider, you know, a holistic approach. And then you go into like the societal levels, right? And the governmental levels. We look at
Mm-hmm.
policies, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like regulations of things, water, like the Flint, Michigan
Yeah.
fiasco with,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's so many different levels that require us to like continue to dig, or it's not even digging upstream, but like reaching upstream to
Mm-hmm.
say, you're presenting to me with this, but I can't do a cookie cutter for everybody.
Right.
Like it's not fair to you to say cookie cutter everybody. This, let me give you this. It's like we need to build time. And so talking about systems, like we can't say, oh, we don't have time to do that because you're just booking slots every 15 minutes. You need to consider that valuable and extend time and figure out, well, how can we manage the funds so that we're able to sustain the practice and not say, oh, no, we can't. Because then it's like, now it's just like a little factory. It's like, come on in, sick. It's like, come on in, sick. But we're not really trying to like prevent the sickness from accumulating. But so yeah, I think it's important that facilities. So in my practice, when I decided to start my practice, one of the first things I thought about was, who are my community partners? Even as a private practitioner, like sometimes you think about community partners with like large institutions, academic centers, but I was like, I may be just a practitioner, but I know I'm going to need help from people who can like give insights from different angles. And so so on my website, you'll see I have community partners because I needed to get the insights from people who are already doing the work and I don't have to reinvent it. So I have, you know, Black Mamas ATX. They help with maternal, pregnant women to decrease the maternal mortality like after delivery, especially for Black women. So because for me, I get the children in my practice, but it's like, hey, how's the mom doing? Because I don't want to have a newborn who doesn't have their mom anymore because of complications after they gave birth. So it's like, how the mom's getting supported after they deliver, and knowing that I can sort of like be able to refer moms if they need extra supports, I can refer them to that group. There's Safe Alliance. So whenever I identify mental health issues, intimate partner violence, Safe Alliance, they teach healthy relationships for teens, especially if they've been exposed to violence in their environment. They don't really know how to deal with it. So then they offer, you know, different sessions. They meet them at schools to talk to them. That's a program that's already developed. I don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
And so it's like, I may be able to identify some things, but I need to be able to refer or partner with others, you know, in the community so that they can sort of like pass the baton, because they only see me that one time in you know, at one point in time, or once a year if they're only coming for well checks, you know.
Right.
But how do I say, hey, are you okay? You're doing great. There's nothing that I identified, but to prepare for you for your next step, why don't you go to the African American Youth Harvest Foundation, where they do mentoring, where you get exposed to different careers, you know, you get opportunities for career development, IT, you know. So it's like, again, it's being proactive and not just waiting for something bad to happen, or waiting for them to get sick, or waiting for them to fail class, you know, like why do I have to wait? Just tell them what the next step is. And so that's what I'm trying to do in the clinic, is just really build partnerships where, you know, there is the Workforce Solutions, you know, they're not on my website yet, but, you know, I'm building relationships with them so that when I have young people who are 18 and they're like, I don't really know what I'm going to do after high school, I'm like, well, why don't you go check out Workforce Solutions? Here is, I always open up the website during the visit and I say, look at how you can do a career assessment, you know, your personality test, and say, who are you? What do you like to do? Like, you know, I'm a doctor, but that can also help their health. Like, if they're not like health status is so related to academics. is like if you don't graduate from high school, your health expectancy is lower to some degree. If you are not in some sort of like financial comfort, not saying that you gotta be rich, but economics affects your health because then you're stressed out about like how you're going to be keeping the lights on and all that, or manage money. So in my clinic, we do something called centered groups where I teach how do you manage your time and your dime. And it's like literally like thinking about how do you think ahead? You're young now, get a bond, put $10 in that bond and you'd be surprised how it kind of like, so just different things that I feel like we don't get an opportunity to be proactive, to understand what affects our health, and knowing that it's beyond the organic nature, it's beyond the biology. And a lot of it is the determinants that are socially or societally or governmentally, driven. But we need to now bring that back into our acute care settings. And I think there's some of us who are thinking about that, but it's a few of us. It's a few of us. Yeah, we're unicorns in that sense.
So I am like really awestruck by this conversation right here because, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, that this is not your typical practice because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but most practice settings, when they talk about interdisciplinary stuff, they're not talking about partnering with somebody in the community that's offering mentoring. They're talking about
how does the money with the
psychiatrist over here. I'm going to partner with this.
Yeah.
It's all specialty,
Yeah. Yeah.
But what you're talking about is something that is truly preventative from the standpoint of you're dealing with the psychosocial issues that are impacting health. So my question for you coming out of that is, how have you found that these connections have impacted your practice and the outcomes that you're seeing?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I would say, we're just a year and a half into the practice. And a lot of our work, we're still building. We have about 313 patients now in the practice. Looking at data is where we haven't quite yet gotten a chance to be able to say, let me look at how well we're doing. All I know is that people keep coming back. And so for now,
well, hold on. Can I ask a question? Isn't that the best data? Isn't that the best?
People keep coming back and they keep getting referrals. And I get like, what warms my heart is when I have families. So like, my cousin told me about this clinic and we've tried other places. So like when I'm getting like families bring the rest of their families, like that warms my heart. I have like a whole crew of my friends who our kids are close, and like I would say majority of them are in my practice, and it's like a testament to say, okay, we're doing something all right. But we're working on getting some more like concrete like number data to kind of see what our impact really is. But it's taken like human resources and trying to get other people. I just hired an office manager just maybe a couple of weeks ago to help me start thinking more about like, how do I assess the health of my clinic, like on the numbers sense of it. But we're I feel like we're growing. Like we're growing.
313 in 1.5 years. I remember when you opened. What are you talking about? Growing. You're gonna need another doc soon.
Yeah, that is. I have a nurse practitioner who's in the waiting.
Okay, so there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that it would not have some amazing impacts. Because like when you're in the beginning, you were talking about just noticing that, can I eat this abstract thought? Just having that thought process that if we're meeting, or at the very least, not necessarily meeting, but maybe addressing, providing opportunities for basic needs to be addressed, then we can look at the higher level stuff. We can talk about medication and changing your nutrition all day long, but if somebody can't turn the lights on, they're certainly not going to go buy organic.
Right? Right? Like preach that specifically.
This is good. I wanted to ask you about what it was like when you got your first job and all of that, but with all of that was thrown out the window when you went to Uganda. Because Brother Glenn asked earlier, he said, what is the difference practicing medicine here in the United States and back in Nigeria? I don't think you've ever practiced in Nigeria.
Well, I didn't practice. I did a mission, a medical mission in Nigeria,
Okay.
2018. Yeah, because
Talk to
that
us
was,
about that.
yeah, that was one of my dreams, and that was one of the reasons why I actually decided to, because in my med school, we had the opportunity to either stay in England and take the PLAB exam or take the USMLE exams to come back to the States. And initially, I was going to just take the PLAB exam and just like be out in Europe and everywhere. But after Uganda, one, I think I got connected to my Nigerian and African roots while I was there. And I missed home. I missed my family more.
Mm,
And so I think that was when I had the switch to say, okay, maybe I won't be a wandering physician and I'll have some roots in the States and I'll come back. And so I think in doing that, I forgot what was my train of thought now. About Nigeria. Yeah. So that's when I was like, okay, I'll come back to the States to practice. But one of the things I found in Uganda that's similar in Nigeria, because I did the mission trip after training.
Okay.
And so I was like, I'll come back to the States and I'll go and do occasional mission
right.
trips, but I need to have a base. Because one of the things I found was that there aren't a lot of coordination or the coordinated systems in third world or other non-westernized areas as relates to healthcare. It's just literally whatever you have in this hospital and whoever's donating, like that's kind of all you have. You don't really have like, oh, this is what is this, Advent Health in Florida, and you have different you have different satellites.
Yeah.
Here we have St. David's Foundation, so I feel like there are few, but few of them are interconnected to share resources. And so a lot of these hospitals are really isolated and independent and can't really survive. And so patients have to buy their own IVs if they need to be, treated for dehydration, or they need to bring their own beds, if they need a place, and then families don't really have a space in their exam, rooms, which are open sometimes with no doors, so privacy is limited. So, but that was one of the things that I saw. I was like, the resources are definitely low, and unless you have the means, that could be the difference between life and death for anyone. I remember, oh my goodness, yeah, I remember a kid that we saw during the mission trip who was having a crisis. He has sickle cell, and he was having a crisis, and so we had just landed. We didn't even set up yet. And they were saying, yeah, they've been here for the last 24 hours and they don't have any money to get the IV fluids. But I'm like, but you're in a hospital. And so the only thing that he needs for his crises is some IV fluids to kind of flush his system out, so all his red cells aren't like jammed up together. And I believe, like, I think one of our members provided enough money to purchase the IV fluids, but it wasn't enough after we left and the boy died. And so it's just one of those things where it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
So life and death is dependent on money.
It really is. It really is. Like, at least here, there are, shared systems, whether it's like, governmental assistance, Medicaid, or even the emergency room. Like, you can go and get care in any emergency room and no one's going to turn you away. You may have a bill that might be sent to you, but then there are certain different ways that bill can be forgiven, or, you can still live your life. But here, access to care is not necessarily denied for emergency life-threatening services, and so, again, it varies in terms of like what you mean by life-threatening, because some people can have a certain tumor that requires all this sort of like surgery that if you don't have the means, you also can't, get that. But I mean, like, serious life and death, like I don't think any emergency room here would turn a kid away who is having like pain crises.
I do have a question for you,
Yeah.
Doc. Back to and it's been going in my head, and one of my dads, Dr. Flowers, he retired early, and I don't know if it was early, one of his challenges were he was working at a hospital. They had their own practice in Virginia, but then later moved to had their own practice in Chesapeake, Virginia, and then would move, and mom would have her own, and he joined a staff. And one of the challenges he faced was he was trying to deal with the whole person. And so he would ask, did you drink enough water? Are you getting sunlight? Are you getting exercise? But you can't do that in 15 minutes. And all the other docs were just pumping them out.
Yes.
So financially, and you referred to that also. I heard you when you said, how do we manage the resources versus just trying to be a factory? How do you do that? How do you? And you have your own practice, so you can definitely do it. What do you say to a doc who's probably watching and be like, I don't have that freedom?
Yeah.
I mean, how?
Yeah. So here's my answer to that, because that was the only way that I could survive before I opened my own practice. And I didn't have the courage to do it until the pandemic hit, when I was like, man, I think something's missing and I'm not doing something that's giving me peace and joy. And I'm getting palpitations just even thinking about going back to work. But there's a podcast that I came upon during that time that really brought some things to life to me as a physician, because in medical school, you're really only taught to just like finish and go work for someone in a hospital or a clinic. Like that's it. Whereas dentists are taught to be entrepreneurs, because there aren't that many like dentists, conglomerates in a sense. Like most dental offices are
standalone.
Yeah, they're standalone. They're entrepreneurs. And so during the pandemic, I happened to be on medical leave just when everything was shutting down. And so I was like, I don't want to go back to work, but I don't know what to do. And there was this doc called Dr. Una, who does a program called Entre MD. And she teaches medical providers to be entrepreneurs and to think about like what other skill set do you have that allows you to have another source of income, so that you're not so dependent on whatever caps or parameters that your institution is putting on you. So you can be an intrapreneur. So that's what I was when I was still then. I was working in a system. I didn't have a practice, but I also knew that my mind had been liberated. And so she was like, you can be an intrapreneur and find a way to develop the skill sets that that you might need if you need to pivot. And so what does that look like? And how can you develop other streams of income using the medical expertise that you learned all these years? It's not to say you do away with all your medicine, but it's like you add on things that bring you joy. And so for me during that time, it was like, surprisingly, it was public speaking. It was like doing podcasts on health topics, writing blogs, and being considered a medical expert in different settings that were looking for that. And so surprisingly, I started getting paid for doing stuff like that. And I didn't know that I could get paid for that. And so that again got me to start thinking, oh, I can still be a doctor, but in a different way, and use my passion for public health to find different ways for me to make money. So I'm not like only dying because I have to spend 15 minutes here. And so I tried to negotiate my panel so that I can have more time with patients. And when they weren't able to be flexible on that, that's when I said, I got to get out of here. And so, but then in my practice, there aren't that many private practices, especially pediatric practices, that are surviving just by seeing patients alone. That's why most of them have to see 40 patients so that they can, make ends meet. But because of my experience as an entrepreneur, I said, I need to figure out, I have to diversify my portfolio from the get-go. I cannot be driven by needing to see 10,000 patients each day because I need to keep the lights on. So what else can I do to build it into the clinic? So that's why my clinic is called Centered Youth Clinic and Consulting. So the consulting arm of my clinic is very strong in the sense that there's a lot of passive income that happens with things that I like to do. That is not like, oh my goodness, I'm stressing myself and walking.
So we should be paying you a lot of money for this right now. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Hey, this is all love. This is all y'all. We all paid in different ways.
That sounds to me like she said we should be paying a lot of money right
Social media, I want you to hear this right now.
Yeah.
This could have cost you a pretty penny.
Yes,
for free.
You got for free.
Brought to you by KW Ministries. Check out the website.
Just know she likes me, okay?
Hey, y'all paid me in so many different ways. You don't understand.
No,
Like this couple here has fed my soul so many. I can't even tell you. Like, I can't even tell you. So yeah, y'all are. Don't worry, the tab is already paid.
This was good. Oh man, the hour is over, Doc. Yes. We're so grateful to you. My takeaway tonight, Kamala, is the systems approach. And you know, in my job, I've been trying to reach out to the community, but I have a new reason to now, Doc, is that my members would have been so real quick, and it's 9:00. The other day, this was a little about 2 or 3 months ago. I stood before my congregation, and I was trying to hype them up. Let's get excited. And Holy Spirit said to me, "You're trying to get people who are unhappy in their lives at home to be happy at church. What are you doing? That's just demonic. What are you doing? You're trying to tell them to pretend." And what you just did for me tonight, and from a personal place, is it's not just the church. And I know I try to reach out to folk, but it's going to be even more intentional now, in that the community has to be working together. If we're going, your hospital can't do mental health without the construction company. And that's what I'm taking away from this. My church can't provide spiritual care without the hospital. It takes a community working together, and so I thank you for that, and I'm really, really, really grateful.
You know what we just did? We just leveled up. People need people.
We just leveled up. People need people, not just me needing you, but systems needing systems. Systems needing systems. And in places where that's not happening, like you pointed out, and that was my experience in Uganda. I didn't go there as a medical student or a doctor, but that was my experience also, is that because everybody was by themselves trying to get everything they can, way more people got left out. And so I want to say thank you very, very, very much. We'll come back and say thank you in a second and give you the last word, but let's see who win our prize tonight.
All right, the wheel, it spinneth. And every time I say drum roll, please, I say to myself, we should get a drum roll.
All right, Sister Martin, congrats. I spoke that into being. So, Sister Martin, the gift that we want to send, please put in your sister's address in Antigua, so that way we can send it to them from you. Yes. And we will send them a journey through the gospel of John with Jesus. I think so too. So put in your sister's address and we will send that to them from you.
If you did not win tonight, guys, I've got to do the shameless plug right here. If you did not win tonight, you can still be a winner. Head on over to www.kwministries.net/shop and you can be a winner too.
Right, that's with your money.
There you go.
All right. And then there's something that we try to do on our program for folk that come on. So have you written anything yet? Where are we as far as producing?
I wish I could say that I've written something.
But you are going to.
I know I'm going to.
Okay.
Because I have I have a folder on my phone with all these notes that come to my head.
That needs to, okay.
Well,
But
Doc has a product right now.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Let's send people to her practice website for
Right.
people who are in the area who.
and I
That's
have,
what
you
we
know
think.
what I have? I do have. I mean, I have backpacks and swad shirts. If they want,
Oh,
Sweet.
nice. What's the cost?
I don't know. I've never charged people for it.
Oh, you don't charge people for them. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we were trying to pour back into your
Oh,
right. That's what
I
we were trying to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet.
No,
I haven't
it's
gotten
not.
into swag yet. Just yet.
Send
Send them to my practice. That they'll get their stuff that way.
What is your website? Let's get your website up there.
Sure. It's www.centeredyouth, as in like centered, youth.com.
www.centeredyouth.com. That's www. So we'll have it up there. Man, we should have asked that from way earlier. But there we go. And then, so Auntie, when we do the so what Anna Kay is going to do, Doc, I don't know if you've seen it. She's going to splice up our interview shorts, and then have it. So please put centeredyouth.com on those, Auntie, when you do that. Doc, thank you. We are so grateful.
Thank you. I'm glad I got to come back.
I just think that this has been just an amazing.
Will you come back?
It's a reminder.
Okay, good.
For me, that it is possible for medicine to be practiced from a really broad systemic view, and that's hopeful in a world where a lot of times medicine looks different. So thank you for that.
And some of that would be because of naps. Some of that would be your trips during med school, and some of that would be, like you said, your own upbringing. And so you did not, you owned you and then use it to bless others. Thank you.
Amen. And you all are blessing so many people through this, just in your ministry together. Honestly, just modeling this, you'd be surprised how many people are just like, how y'all do this? Like, how are y'all getting this done? So just never be weary in well doing, because honestly, yeah, hang in there. Thank you so much for hanging in there each Monday and being persistent at it. So
thank you.
We appreciate you, and now that we know that it costs a lot of money to have you, I'm gonna be fearful of asking you, but I hope you'll come back.
You're hilarious.
Thank you.
This will be my time. This is my time.
We'll take it. We'll take it. We're grateful. God bless you.
Love you guys. Thank you so much.
You more.
Bye,
Blessings.
Kamala. Bye.
Hey guys, if it's Monday night,
you're live with KW.
peace.